The state executed Stephen West by electrocution at the Riverbend Maximum Security Institution in Nashville. He was pronounced dead at 8:27 tonight.
Reporter Jim Matheny is live in Nashville this evening. He was there to hear from witnesses of the execution. Jim.
Hey, Beth and Robin. Well, as you said, we're here live in Nashville. We're about a mile down the road from the prison where Steve West was executed tonight. His execution comes 33 years after the crime in which he murdered Shelia and Wanda Romines, mother and daughter in Union County. Now, here's the timeline that we were told about tonight's execution, with these times being Eastern Time, not Nashville Central Time. But witnesses to the execution said that they were there. The blinds opened to the death chamber at 8:15. At 8:16, wet sponges were placed on his head. Then the chair was plugged in. Now, West was said to be emotional and crying during this time, and his last words were, "In the beginning, God created man." Then he began sobbing and finished by just simply saying, "Jesus wept." Now, once the execution began, that first 20-second jolt went through West at around 8:18, 8:19, according to the witnesses. Then there's a 15-second pause, then another 15-second jolt at 8:19. After that, West was slumped down in the chair. There were no more signs of life. At 8:27, he was pronounced dead.
I would emphasize that it was very difficult to watch a man weeping in the electric chair. He was beside himself, and that was evident.
From past executions and things that we've heard, when it comes to final words, we don't normally see them sobbing and crying. So that kind of took me aback in that moment.
Just a completely different visual to watch. You know, the inmate is looking at you during an electrocution, and during the lethal injection, they're lying down, kind of just looking upwards.
Now, a lot of what they're talking about tonight, the focus is on Steve West, his last words, his final meal, his last moments alive. But for those who were affected by this crime, that is not where the focus is. The focus is not Steve West, it is on his victims, 51-year-old Wanda Romines and her 15-year-old daughter, Shelia. Now, back in March 1986, West and another man, 17-year-old Ronnie Martin, went to the Romines home in Union County. That's where the victims were tied up. Shelia was raped. Both mother and daughter were stabbed to death. And Jack Romines, their father, their husband, came home from work that afternoon, found them butchered. Now, he really sought the death penalty for West, but Jack Romines himself died in 2008 from a heart attack before he could see this execution carried out. But before Jack died, he asked a relative and close friend, Eddie Campbell, to carry on his mission.
If anything happened to him, that I would see this through. And that's what I've been trying to do all these years. And we was together on it until he died in February of 2008. We've come this far without him, and it's been sad. He's always on my mind.
Now again, Eddie Campbell says the execution of Steve West does provide some closure, but it still is not the end. He says they still have to make sure the other killer stays behind bars, that being Ronnie Martin. Now, he pleaded guilty to both murders, but did not get the death penalty. That is in part because he was 17 when the crime happened. Martin got a couple of life sentences, but he is eligible for parole in 2030. And now, in a statement later on tonight, Eddie Campbell said one of his regrets for those surviving victims of the family members is that Martin also did not receive the death penalty. Send it back to you.
All right, Jim Matheny, thank you. Today, people from Tennessee and against the death penalty gathered for a vigil at Crouch Park. They hold the events every time there is an execution in Tennessee. Their hope is to get attention from legislators to ban the death penalty. One member of the group says they believe the punishment is immoral.
There's no argument, but the crime was horrible. It's just, does the punishment of death make sense?
Tennesseans Against the Death Penalty's mission is to educate people about the death penalty.